I need to admit something before you decide what kind of man I am. I did not fall for my girlfriend's mom in a single reckless moment. It happened slowly, and that might be worse. For 3 months, I avoided Diane Calloway like she carried something dangerous in her purse. Not because she was cruel, not because she disliked me, but because the first time I met her, I felt seen in a way that made me uncomfortable, and I don't scare easily. My name's Cole Hartley. I fix things. Pipes, wiring, old houses that sag, and whisper and beg someone to understand them. I'm good at it. I finish what other men walk away from. That used to feel like enough. I'd been dating Jess for 8 months when she told me her mom was coming to town. The way she said it, careful, hopeful, told me this mattered. So I showed up polished, steady, reliable. Then I knocked over a candle at dinner. It was small, embarrassing. Wax across white linen. Jess laughed it off. I apologized. Diane watched me. Not judging, not smiling, evaluating, like she was adding a detail to a file she'd already started. That look stayed with me longer than the stain on the tablecloth. So I made a decision that felt mature at the time. Whenever Diane was around, I wasn't. Work emergency, supply run, phone call outside. I became a ghost in my own relationship whenever her car pulled into town. I told myself it was respect, boundaries, simplicity. But the truth? I didn't trust the way I felt when she looked directly at me. Then one Saturday in late September, Jess called. Her mom's flight was landing. She was stuck at work. Could I pick Diane up? Just this once. I said yes, because I always say yes. I got to the airport early and stood outside, arrivals watching the doors slide open and shut, telling myself it was just a ride. 40 minutes, polite conversation. Easy. I had no idea that drive would be the first crack in something I thought was solid. And I definitely didn't know it would end with me questioning which woman I was actually trying to build a life with. The first 10 minutes of that drive were painfully polite. How was the flight? Fine. Good. Award-winning conversation. Her phone died somewhere between the airport exit and the highway ramp. No music, no map, no distraction, just the hum of the engine and 2 people who had spent 3 months carefully not knowing each other. Then she asked what I'd been listening to before I picked her up. I told her the truth. A podcast about historical restorations, load-bearing walls, original floor plans, the kind of thing most people fake interest in. She didn't fake it. My husband was an architect, she said, turning slightly toward me. He had very strong opinions about staircases. That caught me off guard. Not the husband part, the tone. There wasn't grief in it, just memory. Steady and lived in. I asked what kind of opinions. And that's when the drive changed. She talked about a barn her grandfather rebuilt in western Pennsylvania, about learning to drive on dirt roads, about watching her husband sketch designs at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. She didn't overshare. She offered pieces, and I found myself offering some back. I told her about my dad starting projects he never finished, about growing up in a house that always felt halfway done, about why I became the guy who closes the loop. She glanced at me thoughtful. That's either a calling, she said softly, or a coping mechanism. I laughed. Probably both. She laughed too, not polite, not careful. Real. Something loosened in my chest right then, like I had been bracing for impact and realized we were just talking. By the time we pulled onto Jess's street, I didn't want the drive to end. That realization scared me. Jess wasn't home yet. Diane looked at the front door, then at me. I suppose you could come in, she said. It is your girlfriend's house. Girlfriend. The word landed heavier than it should have. Inside, we made coffee. And instead of small talk, she asked me what part of the city actually felt like mine. No one had asked me that in years. I answered without thinking. And when Jess walked in an hour later and found us mid-conversation, there was something in her smile. Warm, but careful, like she had just noticed a detail she couldn't unsee. And I couldn't either. I told myself it was nothing. That's the lie I kept repeating. 2 adults had a good conversation. That was all. Jess was happy we'd talked. She said her mom didn't open up easily and whatever I'd said must have landed right. I nodded like that was the whole story. But something had shifted. The following weekend was Drew's cookout. Backyard. Overcooked burgers. Cheap folding chairs sinking into uneven grass. Normal. I showed up determined to be normal. Diane arrived 20 minutes later. I felt it before I saw her. That's the part I don't like admitting. She crossed the yard with a dish in her hands, said hello to the group. Let Jess hug her, and then her eyes found me. Not searching, just landing. Jess pulled her toward the drinks. I stayed near the fence talking to Drew about a deck he wanted to build before winter. I was being present. I was absolutely not tracking where Diane stood every few minutes. Then she walked over. Alone. Not dramatic. Not secretive, just choosing the same patch of grass I was standing on. She nodded toward Drew's house. He replaced that siding recently, didn't he? I blinked. Yeah, east wall. Looks clean. Did he match the original thickness? That wasn't a polite question. That was someone who knew what she was looking at. We started talking about additions, about shortcuts contractors take, about a Victorian house 2 streets over that had been chopped into rentals. 2 hours disappeared. Jess eventually found us still by the fence. She smiled. It was warm, but there was something behind it, something assessing. She linked her arm through her mom's and steered her toward the food table. As they walked away, Jess glanced back at me. It wasn't jealousy, it was recognition, like she'd just seen a current moving under the surface and couldn't decide whether to name it. That night I sat in my truck outside my apartment longer than necessary. Nothing had happened, no lines crossed, no secrets whispered, just conversation. But I couldn't stop replaying the way Diane had pushed back when I said old houses should never be changed. Honoring something doesn't mean freezing it, she'd said. And for some reason that sentence felt like it wasn't about houses at all. I went inside and told myself I was overthinking. I didn't believe myself. The next time I saw her, I wasn't prepared. Jess asked me to come fix a drip under her kitchen sink. It's been annoying me all week, she said. Can you stop by after 5? She didn't mention her mom was still in town. Diane opened the door. For a split second, we both just stood there, not surprised, just aware. Jess is upstairs on a work call, she said, stepping aside. The sink's still leaking. Her tone was calm, ordinary. My pulse wasn't. I got down on the kitchen floor and slid under the cabinet. Pipes, wrench, focus. That was safe territory. She sat at the table with tea and paperwork. The room was quiet except for the sound of metal turning against metal. It should have been awkward. It wasn't. That's what unsettled me. We didn't fill the silence with nonsense. We just existed in it, easy, unforced. When I finished, she asked if I wanted tea. I should have said no. I said yes. We took the mugs to the back porch. Early evening, cool air, the kind of light that makes everything feel softer than it is. She spoke first. I've been going through the motions for a long time, she said, staring out at the yard. Work, dinners, visits, it all functions. But I can't remember the last time I actually looked forward to something. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't need to. I felt the weight of it anyway. I get that, I admitted quietly. I'm good at routines. Good at being useful, but sometimes I can't tell if I'm living or just maintaining. She turned toward me then, not analyzing, open. Something in her expression shifted, like she hadn't expected me to answer honestly. For a second the air felt charged, not inappropriate, just real. Then the back door opened. Jess stepped out smiling, apologizing for the long call, and whatever had been building folded itself away. We stood, we reset, we became appropriate again. But on the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that the most honest conversation I'd had in months had happened with the one person. It absolutely shouldn't have, and that scared me more than anything. I tried to let it fade. That was my plan. Work more, think less. Feelings you don't act on eventually go quiet. That's what I told myself. Then I drove past the Victorian on Elm Street. The one Diane and I had dissected at the cookout like 2 people studying a crime scene. There was a brand new "Read 'em for sale" sign in the yard. I didn't mean to slow down. I didn't mean to turn around. But I did. I parked across the street and just looked at it. The porch railing was original. The corbels under the roofline were intact. Whoever had split it into rentals had at least left the bones alone. Good bones, bad luck. That's what she'd said once about houses like that. Before I could talk myself out of it, I took a picture and sent it to her. I stared at my phone like I'd just thrown something fragile across a room. She replied in 4 minutes. That porch deserves better. No hesitation, no polite distance. We started texting about the trim, the staircase, the possibility of salvaging the hardwood. It wasn't flirting. It was worse. It was connection. At some point, Jess called while Diane and I were mid-conversation. I let it ring twice before answering. I had never done that before. Jess asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. I said I had an early job. She said, okay, soft and easy like she always did. Jess never pushed. I used to think that was comfort. That night, sitting alone in my apartment, it felt like space. And space is dangerous when you're already drifting. Diane sent one more message before bed. Good bones aren't permanent. Someone has to choose them. I read it twice. It felt like it wasn't about the house. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. Nothing had happened. No lines crossed, but something inside me had started leaning in a direction. I wasn't sure I could control, and I was beginning to understand that avoiding her for 3 months hadn't been about respect. It had been about fear. Jess knew before I said anything. That's the part that still humbles me. We were sitting on her couch on a Sunday night. TV on volume low. Neither of us watching. We had been quiet like that a lot lately. Not angry, just elsewhere. She spoke without looking at me. You feel different. My stomach tightened. Different how? Like you're here, she said softly, but not fully. There was no accusation in it. That made it worse. I opened my mouth to deny it. Nothing came out. She set her mug down and finally looked at me. Calm. Steady. Braver than I was in that moment. It's my mom, isn't it? Not sharp, not dramatic, just honest. I didn't answer right away, not because I wanted to lie, because I needed to understand what was true before I spoke it. Nothing happened, I said. She nodded. I know. I didn't go looking for anything. I know that too. The way she said it made something crack inside me. She wasn't asking for details. She was asking for truth. And the truth was simple and complicated at the same time. I feel more awake around her, I admitted quietly. I don't know why. Jess inhaled slowly. That's what I saw, she said. That hurt. Not because she was angry. Because she had been watching. I've seen you at backyard parties, she continued. In my kitchen. At the hardware store parking lot when you didn't see me yet. You look more like yourself. I had no defense for that. We sat in it together. No shouting, no blame. Just two decent people recognizing something had shifted. I don't want to hold you in something that's already leaving, she said finally. That's when I realized she had been braver than me for weeks. We ended it the way adults do when love isn't wrong, just no longer right. Carefully, gently. At the door, she hugged me longer than usual, and I held on because she deserved that. Driving home, the silence wasn't dramatic. It was clean. But underneath it was a single unsettling thought. If nothing had happened, why did it feel like everything had? I didn't call Diane after Jess and I ended things. That matters. I went to work the next morning, fixed a cracked water line in a basement that smelled like mildew and old paint, crawled under a porch to replace rotted beams, did everything I always do when I don't want to think. I gave it space, because if this was real, it needed to stand on its own, not on the wreckage of something else. A week passed, then another. I drove past Elm Street twice and didn't slow down. That felt like restraint. On the third Thursday, my phone buzzed while I was loading tools into the truck. It was her. The Victorian just dropped in price, the text read. Thought you'd want to know. No emoji, no softening, just information. I stared at it longer than necessary. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady. That scared me more. Tomorrow at noon? I typed back. Good. One word, like she'd been expecting it. The next day I pulled up 5 minutes early. She was already there, standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed, red hair catching the October light. She didn't wave. She just looked at the house. I walked up beside her, and we stood shoulder to shoulder without speaking. It felt right, not secretive, not reckless, just two people looking at something that deserved attention. I had someone walk through it, she said finally. Rough inside, salvageable. Original staircase, hardwood under carpet. 2 fireplaces working. I asked what she was thinking. She turned toward me then. I told you I've been living like I'm in a waiting room, she said quietly. I don't want to wait anymore. The air shifted. Not heavy. Clear. I'm not asking you to decide anything today, she continued. I just need to know if I'm the only one who feels this. There it was. The question under everything. I swallowed. You're not, I said. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't afraid of the answer. She didn't move right away after I said it. You're not. The words just hung there between us, simple, irreversible. A delivery truck rolled past. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The world kept going like nothing had shifted. But something had. Diane took one small step closer. Not dramatic, not rushed, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her standing beside me instead of a careful distance away. I don't do halfway, she said quietly. If this is something, it has to be real. Thought through. No pretending. Her eyes held mine. Careful, direct. The same eyes that had made me nervous the night I knocked over that candle. Only now I understood them. I don't want to be a reaction, she added. Not to loneliness, not to novelty, and definitely not to rebellion. That stung a little, because I knew she was protecting all of us, even Jess. You're not, I said. This didn't start as a reaction. It started as recognition. The word felt exposed. She studied me like she was measuring whether I meant it. I ended things honestly, I continued. Not because of you. because something between us had already shifted. You just made me see it. Her shoulders softened at that. Relief, not triumph. Then she did something that surprised me. She laughed, soft, almost disbelieving. I have driven past this house 6 times in 3 weeks, she admitted. Like a teenager circling a block. I smiled. 5 for me. There it was again, that ease, that shared awareness without shame. The silence stretched, not awkward, charged. She looked at my mouth once, brief, unintentional. I felt it like a spark along my skin. I've thought about this very carefully, she said, voice lower now. Have you? Yes. No hesitation. That was the moment something settled in her expression. Not impulsive, decided. And before I could overthink it, before either of us could retreat into caution, she reached for the front of my jacket and kissed me. Slow, certain, like she had finished the internal debate and chosen her answer. And when I kissed her back, it didn't feel like crossing a line. It felt like stepping into something we had both already been building. When we pulled apart, neither of us rushed to explain it. That's how I knew it was an impulse. She didn't look flustered. She looked steady. I needed to know, she said quietly, that I wasn't imagining it. You weren't, I answered. The October light hit her hair, and for a second I had the strange, grounding thought that this wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity. We walked through the house that afternoon with the listing agent trailing behind us, unlocking doors and apologizing for dust. Inside it was rough, peeling paint, carpet that had seen too much life, a kitchen that had been renovated, badly sometime in the late 80s and never forgiven. But the staircase was original, solid oak, worn smooth in the center from 100 years of footsteps. Diane ran her hand along the railing, like she was greeting something old and familiar. This could be beautiful again, she murmured. I wasn't sure if she meant the house. We moved from room to room, talking in low voices, not flirting, not touching unnecessarily, just aligned. At the top landing, sunlight poured through a tall window and fell across the floorboards in long gold lines. She stopped there. This isn't simple, she said, turning toward me. Jess is my daughter. I love her more than anything. I know, I said. And I did. She deserves care, not secrecy. She'll get that, I promised. From both of us. There was fear in her eyes then, not about us, about the cost. I stepped closer, not to claim anything, just to stand with her in it. I don't want this to hurt her, I said. It might, she admitted, even if we do everything right. That was the first time doubt flickered, not about us, about consequence. We stood in that light, 2 adults who understood that wanting something didn't erase the weight attached to it. Finally, she nodded once. Okay, she said. 1 word, but it carried decision. And as we walked back down the stairs together, I realized this wasn't about a kiss anymore. It was about whether we were strong enough to build something real on complicated ground. I thought the hardest part would be the kiss. It wasn't. The hardest part was the phone call. Diane insisted on it. No hiding, she said. If we're doing this, we do it in the open. So she called Jess that evening, not on speaker, not with me coaching her, just her voice, steady and honest in the next room while I stood in the hallway staring at a framed photo of Jess at 16. I heard fragments. Didn't plan it. Ended things before. I care about him. Long pause. Another one. When Diane came back into the living room, her eyes were glassy but not broken. She needs time, she said. That was fair. Time is the only thing that makes truth less sharp. The next few weeks were quiet. No dramatic fallout. No slammed doors. Jess didn't call me. I didn't push. Diane gave her space, but she didn't apologize for choosing something real. That balance, love and self-respect in the same breath, made me admire her more. We closed on the house in early November, not recklessly. Carefully, contracts, inspections, long conversations about finances and expectations, and what it would mean to renovate something together. The first day we had the keys, we stood in the empty living room surrounded by dust and possibility. This is going to be hard, she said. I know. And slow. I'm good with slow. She smiled at that. Because she knew what slow meant for me. I don't start things I won't finish. Weeks turned into work. Pulling carpet. Stripping paint. Restoring banisters instead of replacing them. Honoring what was there without freezing it in time. Some nights we worked in silence. Comfortable. Some nights we argued about design. Choices and ended up laughing in the kitchen. With takeout, balanced on overturned buckets. It wasn't fantasy. It was effort. And somewhere in the middle of sanding a century-old door, I realized something. I hadn't fallen for my girlfriend's mom because she was off limits. I fell for her because she saw the unfinished. parts of me, and didn't try to repaint them. She just asked if I was ready to build. The last piece came months later. Jess came by the house one afternoon, walked through the room slowly, took in the work. She didn't smile right away, but she didn't look shattered either. "You look happy," she said finally. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time I wasn't maintaining something. I was building it, and this time I wasn't afraid of finishing.